imagine a book, right? It lands in your hands. Pages filled with this script you've never, ever seen before. And drawings of plants that look like they're from another planet, illustrations, just totally unique.
Yeah, that's basically the Voynich Manuscript. For over 100 years, it's just stumped everyone. Linguists, cryptographers, the best minds.
It really is an amazing thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like a puzzle box from the Middle Ages that just refuses to open.
Exactly.
And today, you're joining us on the deep dive as we try to, well, understand why it's so fascinating. We're going to look at its history, what we know of it anyway.
Yeah, the trail goes cold in places.
Right. And examine that bizarre script, those weird illustrations. We'll talk about all the efforts to decode it.
So many attempts.
And the big theories about what it actually is. We're drawing on the unread riddle of the Voynich Manuscript and the details from its Wikipedia page. Ready to get lost.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So where should we start? How it surfaced, maybe.
Okay, yeah. So 1912, this name, Wilfrid Voynich, now basically synonymous with the manuscript, right? He's a rare book dealer. And he finds it, just stumbles upon it. Quite a reentry after, what, centuries of being hidden away.
It really was. And its history before Voynich, well, it's patchy. We're piecing together fragments.
Right.
We do know about this 17th century alchemist in Prague, Georg Beresch. He owned it.
And he was just as confused as we are today.
Totally. He even wrote to Athanasius Kircher, this famous Jesuit scholar, hoping he could figure it out.
Kircher was like the code breaker of his day, wasn't he?
Kind of, yeah. A polymath. But apparently even he couldn't crack it. So Beresch gives it to his friend, Jan Marek Marci.
Okay.
And Marci sends it on to Kircher.
And there's this letter attached, right?
Right.
Mentioning Emperor Rudolph II.
Yes. That's super intriguing. Rudolph was this huge collector of weird and wonderful things, esoteric stuff.
So the emperor might have owned it. Paid a fortune for it, maybe.
The letter suggests that, yeah. And there's maybe an earlier link, too, to Jakub Pujicki of Tepanek.
Who was he?
He ran Rudolph's Botanical Gardens. There's a faded name on the first page that might be his. Imagine a book possibly held by a Holy Roman Emperor.
Wow. Quite a journey. And now?
Now it's safe and sound, relatively speaking, at Yale, in the Beinecke Rare Book and Manuscript Library.
Catalog number MS-408.
That's the one, Beinecke MS-408. But the physical book itself tells us things, too.
Like the carbon dating. That was huge.
Absolutely huge. Done in 2009, it dated the vellum, the parchment, firmly to the early 15th century.
So between 1404 and 1438.
Exactly. Later tests confirmed it was calfskin.
And it wasn't just any old bit of skin, was it? You mentioned the preparation.
No, not at all. It was incredibly careful work. The skin side and the flesh side of the parchment are almost indistinguishable. That takes skill.
Shows real effort went into making the book itself.
Definitely. And they used a lot of material, at least 14 or 15 whole calfskins. That's a significant investment back then.
So it wasn't just some quick doodle.
Doesn't seem like it. Oh, and the binding isn't original. The current goatskin one is later, probably from when it was at the Collegio Romano.
Ah. Any clues about the original?
Well, there are incept holes that suggest it might have had wooden boards originally.
Okay, so we've got this old, carefully made book, Mysterious Past. But the real head-scratcher is what's inside. That text.
Let's dive in. Yeah, the script is, well, it's unique. There's nothing else quite like it. About 25 distinct symbols or glyphs.
And they form words, right?
Yeah.
But not words we recognize.
Exactly. They have a consistent structure, these words. And statistically, they show patterns. Patterns that kind of look like natural language.
Kind of look like, but don't quite match anything known. That must be maddening for linguists.
Oh, it is. It's like hearing a melody you almost recognize but just can't place.
Yeah.
It reads left to right smoothly. The way the strokes are formed, the ductus, it looks fluid. Like the writer knew the script well and wasn't painstakingly encoding character by character.
How much text are we talking about?
A lot. Around 35,000 word tokens across the roughly 240 pages we still have. That boils down to maybe 8,114 unique word types.
Wow.
And the total character count is over 170,000.
And it's not just random symbols scattered around. There are rules.
Seems like it. Statistical analysis shows things like certain characters only appearing at the start of words, others only in the middle or at the end.
Like prefixes and suffixes?
Sort of analogous to that, yeah. And you also see this weirdly high frequency of words that differ by just one single letter or glyph.
Stress?
Very strange. Then you have a few dozen rarer characters only popping up once or twice. And importantly, no obvious punctuation at all.
It's like looking at the blueprint of a language, but we don't know what it builds.
That's a good way to put it. And people have tried everything to figure it out. They've even made special alphabets just to study it systematically.
Like EVA.
Exactly, the extensible Voynich alphabet. It's a way for researchers to consistently represent each symbol for computer analysis, looking for patterns, repetitions, anything.
But amongst all this unknown script, there are these little hints of something familiar, these bits of Latin writing.
Yeah, tiny fragments. On a few pages. There's that faded signature, possibly Jakob Tepenetz.
Right, the potential owner.
Maybe. Then there's a German phrase, der Musteil, a widow's share. And names of months, March through December. But the spelling is interesting, suggests maybe medieval French or Italian from the Northwest, or even the Iberian Peninsula.
So little clues, but they don't unlock the main text.
Not directly, no. And then there's this really weird script on one page called Michitones, looks like distorted Latin. It's like teasing glimpses of the known world.
Almost like the author couldn't quite help themselves, letting bits of their own language slip through.
Possibly. Or maybe they were added later. That's another layer. And speaking of layers, there's evidence the text itself might have been touched up.
Retouched. How?
A computer scientist, Jorge Stolfi, pointed out places where darker ink seems to have been written over fainter script.
So, corrections. Or later additions. We don't even know if we're looking at the original pristine text.
It raises that question, yeah. Another complication.
And despite all this, all the effort by codebreakers, literal codebreakers from World War I and II tried, right?
They did some of the best.
Still nothing definitive, still unreadable. It's kind of humbling.
It really is. It just highlights how unique, how complex this thing seems to be. Which brings us to the pictures.
Ah, yes, the illustrations. If the text is confusing, the pictures are.
Correct.
Just wonderfully bizarre. What are the main types?
We usually break them down into about 4 main groups, though some people split hairs and make it 6.
Okay.
The biggest section is herbal. That's 112 pages, usually 1 or 2 plants per page with text next to them. But the plants...
Are not real plants, are they?
Mostly no, or at least nothing identifiable. You'd think with detailed drawings, something would match up.
But they don't.
Very few do, maybe tentatively. A wild pansy, a maidenhair fern, perhaps. But many look like composites, like someone took the roots of one plant, leaves of another, flowers of a third.
Just mash them together.
Seems like it. Fantastical botany. And interestingly, some of these look like cleaner copies of sketches found in another section, the pharmaceutical one.
Suggesting maybe a process?
Yeah.
Sketch, then refine.
Could be. So the pharmaceutical section, that's about 34 pages. It shows isolated plant parts roots, leaves often with labels in the script.
Okay.
And also drawings of things that look like apothecary jars. Some look normal, others are really imaginative, almost alien designs, again, with text.
Right. Then there's the astronomical section. That sounds a bit more
You
normal.
would think. 21 folios, lots of circular diagrams, suns, moons, stars. Definitely astronomical or astrological flavor.
Wow.
You even see recognizable zodiac signs, Pisces, Taurus, is like that.
So far, so good.
But then you get this one series of 12 diagrams. Each shows 30 small, partly nude female figures.
Nude figures in the stars.
Yeah, holding or somehow tethered to things that look like labeled stars. Very strange. Some are on big fold-out pages. And unfortunately, the last 2 pages of that sequence, probably Aquarius and Capricorn, are missing. Lost to time.
Wow, okay, definitely took a weird turn there. And the balneological section. Bathing ladies.
That's the one. About 20 pages. Dense text, but woven through with drawings of small nude women, some wearing crowns, in pools or tubs.
And they're all connected.
By this incredibly complex network of pipes. It's like plumbing diagrams from a dream.
Yeah.
One big fold-out spread even shows the whole system flowing together like a fantastical water park schematic.
It's so specific, yet so baffling. And finally, cosmological.
Another 13 folios of obscure circular diagrams. More fold-outs here, too. The most famous is the Rosettes folio.
Oh yeah, I've seen pictures of that. Looks like a map.
Kind of, like 9 islands or rosettes connected by causeways with little passels, maybe even a volcano depicted. Very enigmatic. And then there's also a section, 22 pages, just dense text in short paragraphs marked with little stars. People call that the recipe section, but who knows?
So imaginary plants, weird astronomy, communal bathing via strange pipes, maybe recipes. But the text doesn't clearly explain the pictures, does it?
That's a huge part of the mystery. You'd expect the text next to a plant drawing to be about that plant.
But it's not obvious.
Not at all obvious. If there's a connection, it's hidden. And that just deepens the puzzle. Plus, remember, some pages are text only, and we know at least 14 whole folios, 28 pages are missing. We don't even have the complete book.
And the coloring, was that original?
Maybe not. It's a bit crude. Looks like it might have been added later. The pigments used were common, relatively inexpensive ones for the time.
Good grief. So, text we can't read, pictures we don't understand. What do people think this thing actually is? Let's get into the theories.
Okay, there are quite a few floating around. A major one, always, is that it's a cipher, a complex code hiding a real language.
Like Latin. Or Italian, maybe.
Possibly a European language from that period, yeah. Some features, like recurring groups of symbols, things like or, are, showing up together, often have led people to suggest a verbose cipher.
Really?
Where one letter of the real message might be encoded as 2 or 3 symbols in the manuscript. It makes a coded text longer and harder to break than simple substitution.
If it's a cipher, why hasn't anyone cracked it? Ciphers from that era are usually solvable, aren't they?
Generally, yes, and that's the problem. The statistical properties of the Voynich script, like how often certain letters appear, how they combine, they don't really match known European languages or the patterns you typically see in historical ciphers. It behaves differently.
So maybe it's not hiding a known language. Maybe it's its own language, a constructed language.
That's another big theory, that someone invented this script and a language to go with it, with its own grammar and rules. The weird word structure and those statistical regularities kind of point that way. But again, the known constructed languages from around that time are pretty basic compared to this, and most came later.
Okay, what else? The elephant in the room. Could it just be a hoax? Meaningless gibberish made to look fancy?
The hoax theory is always there. Someone trying to fool a rich patron like Rudolph II, maybe, or just an elaborate joke.
How would they even do that?
People have suggested methods, maybe using templates or simple algorithms, though some proposed tools like a cardin grill were actually invented after the manuscript was made.
And what's the argument against it being a hoax?
It's those statistical patterns again. They seem quite sophisticated.
Really?
It's hard to imagine someone just making up gibberish that happens to have word-length distributions and prefix-suffix frequencies so similar to real language without modern computers to help. It suggests some kind of underlying system.
Right. So if not a cipher, not constructed, maybe not a hoax, what about a real language we just don't know anymore? A lost language?
That's a very strong contender. Written down in an invented alphabet, maybe? People have tried to link it to all sorts of obscure language families.
Like what?
Oh, everything from East Asian languages to dialects from Northern Europe, even, controversially, Nahuatl from Mexico, though the timing and context for that is tricky.
So a language that just disappeared without any other trace.
It's possible, especially if it was spoken by a small or isolated group. The linguistic analysis showing similarities to natural language structures gives this idea some legs.
Are there other sort of less mainstream ideas?
A few. Some thought it might be a form of shorthand, but the sheer length of the text makes that seem unlikely.
Right.
Steganography, where the real message is hidden within the visible text, maybe in letter choices or spacing, is hard to rule out, but also almost impossible to prove.
And what about glossolalia? Speaking in tongues?
Yeah, that's been suggested, like automatic writing, maybe in a trance. Highly speculative, of course, and not really testable.
So basically, for every idea, there's a counter-argument or a big question mark.
Pretty much sums it up. And that uncertainty definitely extends to who actually wrote or created it.
Let's talk authorship. Any suspects? Roger Bacon was an early one, right? Mentioned in that leg.
He was. Voynich himself liked that idea initially, but the carbon dating to the 1400s completely rules out Bacon, who lived in the 1200s.
Okay, so Bacon's out. What about Voynich? Did he fake it?
People definitely suspected him early on, a bookseller creating the ultimate rarity.
Makes sense to be suspicious.
But again, the 15th century dating kills that theory. Plus, we have that Baresh letter from the 1600s proving it existed long before Voynich found it.
Right. Anyone else? Fontana.
Giovanni Fontana, yeah. 15th century Italian engineer. There are some very slight similarities in illustration style to his known work, but he used simple ciphers, nothing like this script, so probably not.
And the name on the front page? Jakub Tepenec, Huszki.
Jakub Huszki. Rudolph II's pharmacist, ran the gardens. He's a plausible owner, definitely. But the signature isn't a perfect match to his known handwriting, so still a maybe.
Any more recent suggestions?
Antonio Averlino, also known as Filaret, was proposed. He was a 15th century Italian architect. The timing fits the dating.
Okay.
And way back, people speculated about John Dee and Edward Kelly Elizabethans interested in magic and codes. Dee owned Bacon manuscripts, but there's zero direct evidence linking them to this particular book.
So the author remains unknown.
Yeah.
Another mystery.
Completely unknown. Adds to the allure, I suppose.
Definitely. Now, we mentioned attempts to decipher it. Can you give us a couple of examples just to show the range of ideas and, well, the failures?
Sure. One early big one was William Romain Newbold in the 1920s. He thought the real text was hidden in microscopic marks within the letters, representing Greek shorthand.
Microscopic marks?
Good.
Seriously?
Yeah, it generated a lot of buzz, but it was thoroughly debunked later. Just wishful thinking and over-interpreting imperfections.
Okay. What else?
In the 40s, you had people like Joseph Feeney claiming it was abbreviated Latin in a simple code. Lionel Strong suggested another complex cipher, blaming it on a 16th century English author. More recently, you get claims involving Hebrew, Old Turkic, even a hypothetical Proto-Romance language.
But none of these have stuck.
Nope. Not a single one has been independently verified or accepted by the wider community of experts. Most get heavily criticized for flawed methods or forcing interpretations. It's a graveyard of failed decipherments.
So still stubbornly unreadable.
Yeah.
And even though we can't read it, it has had an impact, hasn't it, culturally?
Oh, absolutely. Its pure mystery is inspiring. It pops up in fiction all the time.
Like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, there was a novel, Lev Grossman's Codex, Deborah Harkness's Book of Life. Lots of authors have used it as a plot device or inspiration.
And inspired another weird book, right? Codex Seraphinianus.
Directly influenced it, yes. Luigi Serafini created his own book of bizarre pictures and an unreadable invented script, clearly tipping his hat to the Voynich.
Even music.
Yep.
A contemporary classical composer, Hans-Peter Kuypers, wrote a piece inspired by it, and the New Haven Symphony even commissioned a Voynich-themed symphony.
That's amazing. A book nobody can read, yet it sparks all this creativity.
It really speaks to that human fascination with the unknown, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The power of a really good puzzle.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, it's pretty clear the Voynich Manuscript is still one of history's great unsolved mysteries. That script, those illustrations, they just refuse to give up their secrets.
Mm-hmm. All the decipherment attempts have failed. All the theories, code, lost language, hoax, they're compelling, sure, but still just theories, no proof.
We're left with those same basic questions, aren't we? Coded message, forgotten tongue, brilliant fake, or something else entirely we haven't even thought of.
Exactly. And the fact that after more than a century of really intense effort by brilliant people, we're basically no closer to knowing, it really tells you something about how deep this mystery runs. So here's a final thought for you, our listener. We know it's from the early 15th century, the dating is solid, and we know the text has these complex statistical hints of structure. Could it be that the Voynich manuscript represents something we've completely lost? A whole different way of thinking about or recording information from that time.
Maybe the key isn't about cracking a code in the way we usually think about it.
Right. Maybe the unread riddle isn't about translation at all, but about trying to understand a fundamentally different mindset, a different approach to knowledge itself, something to chew on. Until our next deep dive, keep those questions turning.